Hi, everybody. I'm Matt from KoreHealth. Today on KoreKast, we're talking to our friend Mark Marzen, whom you'll often find fighting to place at some of the biggest and toughest ultramarathons on the planet. We get into what it feels like to run 100 plus miles at a time, not something very easy to do. Training routines, injuries, good, bad experiences he's had doing races like this, and a whole lot more. We also get into the Badwater 135, which is a super tough race Mark was scheduled to do in July 2020. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, that race got rescheduled for July 2021. So you're going to see Mark do that race next year. Okay, without further ado, here is our conversation with Mark Marzen.
How long have you been in Denver? It's been a while.
Yeah, close to 8 years now. I mean, yeah, I was in Houston for a couple years before this, and then I was in California for like a year before that. So yeah, I mean, once I got here, though, I was pretty sure this was staying.
I just had two friends from college recently move out.
Oh yeah,
to Denver.
Yeah, it's like it's a hot spot out here. It's flooded with people over the past 5 years, probably.
Yeah.
So everything's just blown up even more.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I actually moved right outside of Denver about several months ago, which is a little town called Golden. So it's like, like literally right out my door is a trail going up the mountain. And yeah, I mean, I just have all these trails systems right by me, all these, foothill mountains right by me. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question too, is how did you even get into running these races? Obviously I knew you were a good athlete in high school and all that, but how does somebody go from like, I think I'll just go for a jog one day to like, I think I'll run Badwater next week sort of thing. And obviously you don't just do that. I'm making that sound really easy.
Yeah. It was definitely a process. It's like, I think people hear about stuff and they maybe read a couple more well-known books or something and kind of, jump right into trying to do it in a year or two. And, I moved up to Denver from Houston. I mean, I just, things were not going well for me in Houston, just in a variety of ways. And one of the things about Denver, Colorado, it's just like, everyone comes here for that outdoor lifestyle, be active. People in general seem to really be healthy and, just have that mentality around here a little bit more. And so I started getting running really just to like deal with, life stress and get back in shape. I wasn't really exercising as much anymore. And so I was just, living inside the city and going out for a few miles every few days. And then I heard about this ultra run stuff, from some books I read and met some people in the area who had done it, and it kind of intrigued me a bit. So, I did one marathon in college, but that was just sort of just for, see if you can do it sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so it was probably 3 or 4 years since I had done that. And, I just work was not going well, relationship just ended.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of this rough patch in my life. And running was definitely something I slowly found bringing like a lot of things back that were positive.
Yeah.
And, so I decided to sign up for this 50-mile race, which was like, after running for a handful of months, it was still going to be several months away, and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, so, this race was in the mountains and had a decent amount of elevation gain. And so this was my first race. And, I was just like running around the city and, I was just kind of eating these weird gel things that would always make me want to vomit by the end of the run. It was terrible. And so, yeah, I eventually, trained and went out for this 50-mile race. And did decent at it. Didn't know what I was doing. I had this like pair of terrible worn down Nike like road shoes on the whole time. But I finished it, and it was the like most painful thing by far, that I had done physically, and basically for, I want to say 2 or 3 days, I mean, I legitimately could not walk. Like I would walk down the block and like my legs would just buckle underneath me. And yeah, it was, it just like wrecked my body for a couple months. But it's
do you get used to it? Does that, I have a bunch of questions related to that. And one is,
Sure.
Do you get used to that? And two, how do you get yourself over the dread of knowing like, oh man, this is going to happen to me again?
Yeah. I mean, so what happened in that experience afterwards, really, you shouldn't have to experience that doing an ultramarathon. It's like, I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just needed something to like jump into, some sort of challenge, like go for it sort of thing. And so I didn't do another race for probably close to a year, and I spent that whole year just slowly training more and like learning a ton, meeting people in the community, learning from them. And so, yeah, I didn't do another 50-mile race for another year. And, I had to go to a physical therapist for a while at the time. And it's one of those things where, I can like recover within, and I say recover in the sense of I can go back out running now, maybe, I don't know, 2 days, 3 days after a 50-mile race or 100-kilometer race, which is like, 62 miles. But, recovery is kind of much shorter now and much more fluid, and I would just say easier in general. But it's, it's basically because I'm training better and I'm training up to the race. Like I'm training properly. I'm preparing myself, and but that just comes with time. It comes. I mean, it was still a few years where races would just still like kind of just destroy me, and I'd be out for like a week of non-movement and just feel like just terrible for like a week or two. So I really kind of figured out some things, and yeah, so it just changes. It all changes over time, like anything else. You get stronger, better, more knowledgeable. So
Human body's pretty adaptable to doing stuff like that.
Totally.
What do you like most about running? I mean, you said it was a nice escape to get away, like work is shitty, somebody breaks up with you or something like that. Is that something you can just clear your head for a while?
There's something to me about running that, I may joke around with people I know that, this just makes no sense. It's just like, it doesn't necessarily, bring some obvious thing to the world. It's just kind of, there's no reason I have to be moving around my legs so far. But I feel that's kind of what draws me to it so much, that it's a step away from everything every day. I do it every day.
Yeah.
And there's something about extreme, especially these long runs and these races too, extreme physical pursuits, experiences like that just strips things away, just strips, all the thoughts out. It kind of just brings you really present to what you're doing. And in that way too, it's really helped me confront some things, and when you're out there for so long, it's just, I mean, when I say so long, it's just hours and hours throughout the week, and then these long races. It's just, you can't really hide from yourself, And
yeah, I was gonna say, you spend a lot of time with yourself, and I'm sure you've
right, yeah. And so that could be your best friend or your worst enemy, depending on how things are going. And that's what I like about it. It's just this sort of meditative sort of, this pursuit that always brings something to you. And so yeah, that's probably the main thing.
Do you have any like Eureka moments when you're out, like 20 hours into a run or so on a marathon, or you're doing training runs during the week or whatever, is there something like, oh man, I got like the world's best new toilet seat or something like that?
Sometimes with, it's probably the opposite. It's probably where I go out with things on my mind, things have this sense of, worry or anxiety, and things I'm like ruminating on, things that maybe I'm giving too much thought to. And it kind of brings me centered more so I can, just think more clearly and distinctly through some problems.
Yeah.
I definitely, it brings clarity for sure, I think, on a lot of things. And, I find that with things like work, but just, things like relationships and family issues, like all sorts of stuff, right? It's like,
you come back from one of these things, you're like, all right, I just did that. I'm ready to tackle. I can handle anything that, I can handle anything else that's coming my way.
Yeah. It kind of makes other stresses in life a little more right size, not anything bigger than they have to be. So that's a really
good way to look at that. You mentioned work too, which is sort of interesting for me. How do you juggle the two?
Yeah. I've had that question from some people I meet, they kind of ask me, well, do you even work and stuff? And I do.
It would be great if you didn't have to, right?
Yeah. I mean, that would be a dream. Unfortunately, there's, maybe enough people on two hands that can, that do this full time, in the country right now. But it's one of those things where I cut out a lot of sort of bullshit time, like I don't watch TV. I don't own a TV. I don't own one TV. I don't watch Netflix really. I work like at least 40 hours a week. And there's been times where I've flown out on a Friday night and ran a 100-mile race and been back at work Monday morning. And it's the sort of thing where I just feel like anything else, if you really want to do it, you can find time for it,
Yeah.
I get up, I run before work, usually around sunrise. Sometimes I go out few miles at lunchtime. Sometimes I'll, go back out after work for some more miles. But I can definitely fit it in if, as long as I actually want to. So.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question too, is what does a typical day look like for you? So you're definitely up before the sun rises to put miles in most days, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, a typical day, usually up by 5 and get out the door, for a run. And it just kind of depends where I'm at in the week with what sort of run it is, what sort of training. I usually do about 10 to 14 miles in the morning. And then I've been doing much more of two runs a day, just so I can get out in the heat a little bit too, with this Badwater race coming up. So, and then I'll get back out in the afternoon for a shorter run. So maybe something like 4 to 8 miles. And that's usually much easier, just kind of get out there, get the legs moving again, almost like more of a recovery run. Whereas a morning, morning's usually when I'll do some sort of workout or, something more focused. But, and then weekends, on weekend days, I'll get out for longer runs of, anywhere from 20 to 45 miles, depending on the day and type of training I'm doing. And sometimes I'll do that on Saturday and Sunday. So I'll do like back-to-back longer runs too. So,
It's awesome. You're doing in one day what I would hike in like 2 or 3 days. And you're doing in a few hours what I would hike in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like I started off doing, I don't know, 8 years ago, probably 9 years ago now, doing 3-4 mile runs, just sort of getting out there, moving a little bit, and just, luckily
You caught the bug.
yeah. And, I've been staying healthy and just slowly, stay with it, and consistency kind of just brings a lot of that, volume of running over the course of time. So.
That's a good, like the recovery thing is interesting to me, right? Because it's got to be all about, I talk to, we talk to some elite athletes on here, and they say, it's like 80% training. Some of them are like 80% training and 20% recovery. Some of them are like, it's 20% training and 80% recovery. Like you need sleep, you need to stretch, you need to get rolled out, you need massage. Like, how does that work for you? Or is that something you've prioritized? And obviously you've you sort of learned as you go, right? To see what you needed. How does that work for you?
Yeah. I would say it's sort of like a 50-50 split for me. And, the reason I say that is, running is just something you need to, it's one dimension, right? You can learn about it, you can do it more efficiently, you can hire a coach, you do all sorts of things to get the most you can out of that time. And that can build, that'll build up over the course of time. But then there are, you mentioned a couple of them, these several factors that, a lot of people just sort of brush off. And for me, I found these are the things that really have led to me being a lot more, I feel like, resistant and to injury and resilient with training. And the thing is, there's some tools that are helpful, but in general, it's pretty simple. It's like, I think everyone wants to like find these super magic bullets, just with everything lately in life, but especially in fitness and things like endurance. But it's making sure you get enough sleep every night. It's eating really healthy, even though you're doing these, huge amounts of physical activity. It's like, I'm not, shoving
garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Candy and cake down my throat, just for the, just cause it tastes
just for calories.
Right. Yeah. It's, trying to not, get stressed about other things in life. That's huge too. And, just overall, living a healthy life. It's just, I think, any one of those things is easy to brush off any day of the week,
Yeah.
And I think just all those little things add up over the course of time, though, to really be able to recover more quickly.
Yeah. Hopefully that's sort of a routine. Once you get into that routine, you just, it's easier to keep doing it than it is to break it. Hopefully you get to that point, right?
Totally. Yeah, it just becomes, like other routines, other habits. It just becomes part of your life, and becomes who you are. And yeah, there was this turning point for me with it. It was just sort of a turning point of, I'm not doing this to, I'm not going through a phase. I'm not going through a diet. I'm not going through, this period of intense change. It's like, these sorts of things are just going to be who I am, and just be part of my life, my lifestyle. And, it's worked out well that way. I've just, I've kind of had good energy throughout it all and recovered pretty well now. So
that's an interesting thing is you talked about, there was this sort of this turning point or this tipping point where you did some of that. What's the tipping point, or where was it, or what happened when you figured out that, like, all right, I can, like, not only can I learned how to compete in these things, or I learned how to finish these things. That seems like step one. And then you did step two, where it's like, all right, I feel like I can, like, do well in these things, right? Where is that tipping point, going from, like, I just want to finish, and I just want to, like, do it, to, like, I want to see if I can place in this. I'm like, I want to see if I can win it, right? Or I want to try to win it.
Yeah. I would say a couple years into it, maybe two or 3 years into it. I had a rough couple of years there. I was, I wasn't eating healthy. I was just sort of pounding my body through it, I was really anemic first couple years, and that was like really draining. There's like a hereditary thing I never knew about that I had to like figure out and address. And so, then eventually I figured out what the hell I was doing, and then went on and went to all these different courses for running and coaching and things like that. And so I started feeling better. I could feel myself getting stronger, and I was starting to learn all these ideas. And I don't know, it was just me, maybe just immersing myself in other stories of people who got into endurance events, a bit later on in life, definitely through like some course of life change and lifestyle change, where there wasn't, it was just this period where I distinctly remember where I thought to myself, like, what would happen if I would just not really worry about this next race and that be my only concern, but just like hand myself over to this whole process and just stuck with it for next handful of years, So I kind of switched my like timeline, my time frame to, instead of, a race coming in a couple months, like what could happen in a few years, and I kind of kept things in that mentality, like I'm building towards what's going to happen, 5 years from now, not necessarily up on the next race. And so when I started thinking about that, I started thinking, well, then what would happen if I started leading a lifestyle of like an elite athlete, what would happen if I like ate, elite athletes do, and slept like elite athletes do, and, got my my life in order and lowered my stress levels. Like, how would this all come together? And I think with especially endurance events, man, you're not, you can accomplish like a marathon, ultra marathon, and so on, triathlons, and you can do them in a few months, but man, to excel at them, you're talking years and years for sure, and that's a big shift in sense of time and just your mindset in general, to have something on a scale of several years that you're working towards.
Pretty wild, the mindset shift that you did, and that it's sort of just when you made that timeline longer.
Yeah,
you effectively, it feels like effectively you're putting less pressure on yourself to do well or even to finish these things, and just by that notion, you're doing better and started to really compete better. Do I have the right of it?
Yeah. I kind of had this shift in mentality where basically it became, I'm going to do everything I can to show up at a race prepared in every single way, like, no, I'm not going to show up at a race just half-assing it, and part of that became this like mentality of, like this is just going to be, this is just going to be who I am now, as far as all these different aspects of health, sort of wellness type things, right? And just training in general, like this is going to be who I am. And so it's interesting, it's like I have friends now who, my life looks so much different than it did 8-9 years ago. And like, literally every single way. And I have friends now who like just, only know me as this person, and like you said, results sort of just take care of themselves when you, I think, get things in that mindset, in that time frame. Results just will come, and in general they'll probably be much better and more so what you want. So yeah. It's kind of been the way it's going.
kind of wild how that really wild to me how that works. I would be remiss not to ask you about like mental makeup too, as far as this sort of thing's going. So I read Dave Goggins' book, and I've read a couple of things that Scott Jurek did. Him running the Appalachian Trail, and I think he did Badwater a few times.
Yeah.
I don't know. He might have aged out of that at this point, but I get the sense from reading these books that some of these folks who are running these races are just, I mean, I guess Goggins is a completely different animal, but the mental makeup of these folks are like, I'm going to die before I give up on whatever this is, or I'm out in the heat. If you're running Badwater, and we'll get to, I want to talk to you a little bit about that soon, but like what you like, maybe you even know some of these guys, what is their mental makeup like, and how do you sort of replicate that? How do you convince yourself that it's a really good idea to run for like 30 hours straight?
Yeah. It's a, there's a saying in ultra running, you live a entire life in a day during a 100-mile race. And, I think there's some analogy there, truth in that analogy for sure. The mindset, man, it has definitely changed for me over the course of time. I mean, my favorite race in ultras is the 100-mile race, and now I'm looking at something a little bit longer, dipping my toe in that world. And one of the reasons I like that distance so much is no matter how elite you become, no matter how fast you become, and even like the guys who run races in world record times talk about this, you reach these periods of time where you just wonder like what the hell you're doing. You wonder like, this is the stupidest idea I ever came up with. Like, you gotta be shitting me. I spend all my free time doing this. This is so stupid. Like, it's just.
And everybody feels that way, whether you're at the bottom of the leaderboard or the top.
I think I can't, I haven't been in everyone's heads, but I've heard similar stories from a variety of people. There's been races where I've been at mile 94 and I thought about, maybe I should just stop. This is absolutely stupid. But, I think that's what brings people out to it. It's, I mean, you start running, right? 100-mile race, you get 40 miles into it. Your legs are already feeling pretty beat. And then you kind of think for a second, I still have 60 miles to go, it just screws with your mind, right? It's just too much to really think about. And I think everyone develops their own mental strategy. And for me, that has just become, something along the lines of, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing. And really just trying to stay present as things come throughout the race. Because otherwise, it's like thinking about all those miles coming up is really, I mean, that can be the most torture of a 100-mile race. It's thinking, mental torture of thinking what might be coming, all the stuff you still have to do when you're, already tired and you're only a quarter of the way done or something, So everyone has to develop their own tricks with that, and that's the thing. You can't hide from it, like you can't like bullshit your way through it. You can't fake confidence. It's just, you're gonna have to will yourself through it in some way. It's in the end, it's just kind of on you to figure that out. So that's what I appreciate about it all.
It's wild. I want to get a little ultra marathon specific,
Sure.
If we can. So do you have like a favorite course or a favorite race that you've done? I know you said 100 miles is probably your favorite distance, but is there a specific course that you like best?
100 miles is my favorite distance for all those, those reasons I was talking about. I did a Leadville 100 last year. I really like that because It's it's a popular race. A lot of actual crowds there at certain aid stations and stuff. And so I was able to have a bunch of friends, and my brother even came out to come my crew and stuff. And
Nice.
and so it was the first time a family member was ever able to come out and be there. And that was amazing. It's just like a very historical race, has a lot of, significance in a lot of ways. I would say my favorite course, though, probably is this race up in Wyoming. It's called Bighorn 100. And you start in some small town in the valley, and you just slowly work your way up to the top of the Rockies. And so you're running along the top of the Rockies up there in Wyoming for a while, kind of shoot, eventually come back down. So, it's just a great, really true back wilderness ultra marathon. One aid station, they bring all the supplies in on horses, so you're running along.
You really are.
Yeah. This gang of horses, so it's
Talk to me about how the crewing works, right? So I sort of understand how something like the Tour de France works. Is it a similar setup? I mean, you've got friends that are pacing you. You've got friends that are they've got aid stations or water stations. How does it all work?
Yeah, so it's a bit dependent on the race, but pretty much every race has aid stations, that are several miles, maybe 10 or 12 miles away. There's aid stations spread throughout, and those aid stations have, water, sports drinks, some amount of sports nutrition, some sort of real food, some variety of things too as well, because as the race gets longer, sometimes people eat a little bit different stuff. And so at those aid stations, sometimes you're able to also leave a drop bag there, which has, whatever you kind of want in it. So resupply there through that. And so then again, some of those aid stations, your crew can go to. And your crew is there just to kind of support you and check in with you, help you, see if you need anything, especially when I'm trying, for me at least, and a lot of other people who are trying to kind of compete and go relatively fast, I guess. Crews can be really important and helpful to just hand things off to you. It can be very choreographed and planned out in that way. So you can pretty much not stop at all. And so they can be a huge help. Sometimes there's things like you have to change clothing, weather comes in, all sorts of stuff like that. And then with pacers for 100-mile races usually come in after halfway, and it's sort of like some for safety reasons, because a lot of these races are in wilderness or mountainous areas, and you end up going through the night. And
I was gonna say, you're in the dark too, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so pacers are very helpful in that way. And not all races allow pacers. I've done some 100-mile races just all alone. I've done 100-mile races with no crew at all, and just showed up by myself and ran them with drop bags and stuff.
Is that something you think you'd still do, or is it you're sort of done? You're beyond that now.
Yeah, the thing with crews and pacers, what's great about, like I was saying about Leadville, is you get to share that experience with people, and it was great to have my brother crew for me. I felt like we had this amazing experience together. Similarly, friends pace me. People who are just getting into some of these distances, I've asked to come out and pace me just so they can kind of see what it's like and learn from it. But the races I've done all alone, I've also really enjoyed too, because there is that extra sense of ownership, and it's really you're on your own. So that's kind of a cool experience to go through as well.
What's the best and worst experiences? I know they're polar opposites, but what are What are the best and worst experiences you've had doing like on a race day or on a race more than one day, I guess sometimes?
Yeah, best and worst. The best and worst. Let's see.
I'm sure the worst is like I got injured at mile 5 and I did all this,
No, actually, luckily I haven't experienced it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'll start the worst though. The worst. So I mentioned there was that race, Bighorn 100 in Wyoming.
Yeah.
So I ran that twice, and the second time I went back was because I really wanted to go for a certain time, and I was really trained up. I was like so ready to go. I was like in great shape. And you start by you just go up. You just go up the mountains, right? And it's almost all uphill for the first half. It's out and back, so you turn around, then you come right down for the second half. And so you were running up the first half, and so you're going up in altitude, and a storm starts coming in, and so it starts drizzling and it starts raining a bit more, and the temperature starts dropping into 40s. And I didn't have any rain gear with me. And so, I show up at the midpoint aid station about halfway through with a couple friends that were crewing for me. And I was done. I was, I had been shivering for hours. I literally was on the verge of tears. It was just so extremely uncomfortable and painful. And I just was, cursing, and was kind of like, screw this shit. Like, what am I doing? And, I'm just sitting there in this tent, and it looks like a freaking war zone in there. It's like people are just passed out on cots, and just so many people are dropping out because similar things happen to everybody. It was the most painful, I've experienced as far as a race. Luckily, though, I got back out, and I ended up finishing, which is good. I was really happy about that. But so I got up to that aid station right as night was starting, and for the entire rest of the night, it just poured. And so for about 50 miles, the mud, was 6-7 inches deep the whole time on the way down. And so it's just pouring. It's like 40 degrees. I'm falling on my ass, literally. I'm not kidding, maybe 50 times, just over and over again. Just miserable. So that's probably the worst.
Yeah, that certainly stacks up to about the worst experience I can ever. I feel bad when my grass gets a little muddy and I walk out there barefoot. Oh my God, 50 miles too. And you're running down, you're not even running on a flat surface. You're running downhill at that point too, right?
Right. Yeah. It was not fun. It was fun when it's over for sure. But,
all right. Well, what was the best?
The best, I can't really top. I would just say the best was my first 100-mile race. I've had some really good races as far as, I've set some course records on at races and won some races and all this stuff, and, gotten better and better, but, been really happy about that stuff. But doing a 100-mile race the first time, it just seems so, it seems, it's so frightening to get to do, Yeah. And it was the slowest rate. For example, the 100-mile races I run now are literally 12 hours faster than my first one. So it was so slow. My IT bands and locked up, and my knees were just killing for the last 20 miles. But I was hallucinating by the end. I thought I saw packs of horses in the woods and shit. But man, it's just when you finish that, I crossed the finish line and I said, screw this shit. I'm never doing it again. But I don't think I've ever felt a bigger sense of accomplishment by finishing that.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was crying, and like, it was just like
sort of a religious experience to cross the finish line and something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you want something that kind of can trigger some different ways of looking at life and stuff, at least, I don't think it just changes your life for good, but it definitely gives you a chance to kind of relook at things in a whole different way. So, yeah.
That's wild. What's a go-to meal? You're running Leadville, you're running Badwater. What are you eating like the day before? Like the 24 or 48 hours before?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? My thing is I just stick to what I do every day, I am actually not a huge like carbo loading, eat tons of extra day before sort of thing. I mean, I've started 100-mile races off of just waking up and having a cup of coffee and just started without eating. My go-to is just the same crap I eat every day, which is just, like rice or tacos, really boring. And, I mean, afterwards I definitely, will eat an entire pizza by myself.
Yeah. I was going to say, maybe that's a better question is what do you, after you cross the finish line, where are you going for pizza? Are you getting a steak? Or are you getting a milkshake?
Yeah. Some of the stuff, it takes a day or two to kind of fully get your hunger back.
I was going to say, maybe that's...
you're just depleted, right? It's just like your body's just in total repair mode, and you just, maybe after a day or two, you just become ravenous, and so, pizza, I would say pizza is a huge thing. It's always a kind of a good go-to, for a lot of ultra runners, but
that's awesome.
So, yeah,
that's awesome. Is there such a thing as overtraining for something like this?
There is. I've learned a lot about it, and there's a lot of perspectives out there. I guess maybe I have a bit more of a different perspective on the idea of overtraining, in the sense that for vast majority of people, I don't think it ever happens. Because I just think that term overtraining, I mean, it has its emphasis on training, and I think the amount and intensity of training you need to do to truly overtrain, is most likely going to be such a massive amount that you are going to either stop or highly compensate in some way to make sure that doesn't happen, So, for example, if I increase my volume of running in a week to a massive amount, I mean, I know a requisite of that is that the intensity is going to go down. There's no way my body's going to be able to handle that. I think what's more common though is under resting or under recovering, which I think that's the kind of idea, the term that I think of a lot more. It's not necessarily like, oh, you did too much or the training was so hard that your body's just finished, because that's such a long process that you have to go through. And you're talking, I think, Olympic level athletes, because, man, to mentally push yourself to that level of you just hammer and go hard so much all the time. I mean, that's such a mental space. That's such, you're talking such a tiny percentage of people, of athletes. But I think under recovering is for sure very, very possible, which is, what I think leads to a lot of injuries, a lot of feelings of fatigue. There's definitely doing too much too quickly, doing types of intensity and volume you're just not ready for. But then again, the proper recovery too, you can have really great spikes in training, followed up by really intense focused recovery, and have some great benefits from that as well. So it's not necessarily like a terrible thing to, jump up in training for a tiny bit of time. So.
Yeah. The training thing is an interesting question. So you've got Badwater coming up. There's a specific plan that you're doing, and you're sort of mapping mileage with intensity, and you're hoping to sort of hit that peak before, what peak do you hit, and where, and about what time frame? So now it's June 16th, and you've got Badwater coming up, July, first week of July sometime, right? The 6th, the 7th?
Yeah. So 2.5 weeks out here. With running, endurance, you basically want to structure your training from the least specific types of training to the most specific as you move towards race, your main goal race. I had some other races planned in this spring. Obviously, they all got canceled, right? So, for example, several months ago, I was doing really short, intense work with less volume. Over the course of time, those workouts have become longer in sense of time and volume, but the intensity has come down as well. And then with that, the overall volume of my weekly mileage goes up. And so really, in the past few weeks here, now with about 2.5 weeks left, I'm starting this tapering phase. So, kind of going back down in some things for sure. But within the past few weeks here, it's last block, it's really focusing on not tons of high intensity, but more steady state. So kind of mid-moderate high levels of intensity for longer periods of time, so that, your body's used to moving at this constant moderate to moderate high pace, so that when you go out there for, this race is 135 miles, right? So it's it's going to be slower than, most runs as I do in a week, if not all of them, So it's just really about making that pace that I'm aiming for super easy and comfortable at this point, and that involves, some workouts with just much longer intervals, and then obviously incorporating all the much longer runs in to really get all those systems, moving and dialed in.
So we're 2.5 weeks out of Badwater, and I think that's super insightful, the way you can balance intensity and volume, because I got to believe a lot of folks had a lot of trouble with that. I want to spend the last couple of minutes here talking about Badwater itself. I've done a little bit of research on this. I just want to, I know you finished this race last year and maybe one or two times before. I can't recall, but they call this the world's toughest foot race. Right. Can you tell me more about Badwater? What's the mystique around it? And
so actually I have not done this race yet. So this is
that's right. Okay.
Yeah. Badwater, like you said, it has this title, World's Toughest Foot Race, right? So the idea is, they had to revise the course. The original course, I believe, was 155 miles, maybe, something like that. Because the idea of the course was to go from the lowest point in the continental U.S. elevation-wise to the highest point in the continental U.S. And so the race starts in Death Valley in California, and goes, originally it went up to the very top of Mount Whitney, but now it goes to just the kind of main entrance up along the mountain. So you still kind of go up most of the mountain, but you kind of have to stop at one point. So that's why it's 135 miles now. So it's all on a road that goes through that whole national park system and everything. The main reason that it's called, I think, toughest foot race, you have a handful, you have a good amount of elevation climbing. You have about 14,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of that time. A couple of really big climbs. I would say the biggest thing it's known for is the heat. So Death Valley has recorded the highest temperatures in the world throughout its history. Throughout Death Valley's, since they've been recording this stuff. And
since recorded history.
Yeah, record history. And so it's known to be 120 to 130 degrees throughout the day as you're running. So that's obviously a huge challenge.
Hence your layers today, right?
Right. Yeah. You start at night. So the start time is going to be 9 o'clock at night. And even then it's close to 100 degrees. You don't have all those aid stations I was talking about before. You don't have those at all. So you have to have a crew vehicle, your own crew and your own vehicle just follow you along the way. Since it goes through national parks and stuff, I think they're just not allowed to have those aid stations there. And then, you end it with a 15-mile, I want to say close to 5,000 foot climb at the very end. It's it's definitely one of those races renowned around the world. They only accept 100 people. So
you have to qualify, right?
Yeah, there's this lengthy application process where you submit all your results, the places where they can kind of look you up, and they do some research into you and your results and your running, and they check out your social media and websites, like just I guess everything they can get hands on, and then they have a lottery drawing party, and they announce the 100 people that they picked to run the race every year. So I was fortunate enough to get picked in February, I think it was. So I was pretty psyched about that. So
notoriously difficult they have a couple of other races, right? Have you ran any of their other races?
No, I have not. Yeah, they have a few other ones. Similarly, they're in very, very hot places, and I think some ones in Florida, and there's another one in California. I know that's very lengthy. This race director, Chris Kostman, he puts on a whole series of events, several races, I think, where it's all very similar in the sense of the grueling temperatures. Ultramarathons are very long. The length is very long, and he just likes to
glutton for punishment.
Yeah, torture people or something. I don't know. I'll have to meet him and ask him.
That's awesome, Mark. Well, I appreciate all the time. And, if you guys out there want to follow Mark's journey, he's about 2.5 weeks out from Badwater. You can find him at Mark Marzen on Instagram. I'm sure you're going to post some pictures from Badwater coming up soon, right?
Yeah. I'll have, like I said, I'll have a crew out there, and I'll try to definitely, have them update regularly along the race. And,
that'd be awesome.
Hopefully not too many pictures of me keeled over on the side of the road or vomiting. No promises on that. Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the stuff that lets folks know that it's real. All right. Well, Mark, it was awesome talking to you. As always, everybody out there, you can find KoreHealth at KoreHealth Official on Instagram or on Facebook too. Find us on there. Mark, I wish you all luck in Badwater, and we'll catch up afterwards, I'm sure, to figure it out.
All right, great, man. It was good talking to you, and thanks again.
All right.
Take care.